What do we do with Michael Pittman coming off 2 dud games? Week 13, wide receiver start sit. That's coming up next. Welcome to Week 13, playoffs just around the corner. Let's try to optimize those flexes as we enter must-win territory. Some of you obviously already clinched your playoff berth. Some of you still in contention. Others playing spoiler. And we got to optimize those lineups to make sure you get that Week 13 win. So that's going to start with these flexes, fringe wide receiver 2s, and who else other than Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman. This guy was rock solid for a good portion of 2021. However, as of late, the last 2 weeks, really kind of coming up short. However, there are signs of life in Week 12. He did have a 10-target game, and that is good news for him entering this week's matchup with Houston. Now, I will admit, Houston, terrible against the run, so this should be a big Jonathan Taylor week. However, they are going to have to pass the ball in some capacity unless we see another crazy 5-touchdown game by Jonathan Taylor, but I don't think that will happen. Maybe he gets 2. That's possible, but I do think in some capacity, Indy is going to have to pass a little bit, and Michael Pittman is going to be a big part of that, and this is a defense that you don't want to avoid as a wide receiver. Now, we do have T.Y. Hilton coming back, and there are some other pieces in this offense that get a little bit utilized by Carson Wentz, but the fact is Michael Pittman is the number 1 in this offense, and I don't think he's going to have a 3rd dud game in a row. And this is a great week to bounce back, get back to his mid-season form, and get you back in playoff contention. It's just a defense that has given up 6 touchdowns to wide receivers in the last 4 weeks. I really have a good feeling that Michael Pittman finds his way back in the end zone and comes back with a solid 14 to 26 PPR points this week. I understand it's a big sway in points, but I'm giving you what I think his floor is and what I think his ceiling is this week. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. We're all wrong at times, but I do think Michael Pittman is a great start in Week 13. This, to me, is a put up or shut up week for Kenny Golladay, period. A game against Miami, 18% started. That actually might be a little bit high, but this is a great week to start him if you're in desperate territory. If you got deep rosters, you have to play a lot of different players. Some rosters, you're just playing 2 wide receivers, two running backs, a flex. And in that case, this guy has no use in a roster like that. But if you're a roster that plays multiple flexes and 3 wide receivers and multiple running backs, and you just have a deep roster that you have to field and start every single week, this is a guy that you might have to think about. And like I said, he's almost at that 20%. Almost 1 in 5 managers are starting this guy this week. And, Miami, 30th against wide receivers in 2021. Not expecting Tony. Not expecting Shepard. He had an uptick in targets in Week 12, only 7, but it was an uptick, and he does get valuable targets in this offense. Did I mention Miami is 30th against wide receivers? Yes, I know I did. I'm just kind of reiterating that they're not very good against wide receivers. They've been better against running backs. In fact, they're top 5 unit against running backs. So this is a week where I expect the Giants to pass a little bit more than run the ball, and I expect Kenny Golladay to be a big part of that. And at some point, we have to expect either one of two things. Kenny Golladay is going to start getting going in this offense, in which case, to me, this is the last week to this is the drop dead date. If he doesn't get it going this week at all, he's a drop for me, period. So to me, like I said, put up or shut up. And this isn't like put up, and if you don't, you're going to the bench. This is put up, and if you don't, I just don't have time for you on my fucking roster. Like I said, the playoffs are right around the corner, and we don't have time for guys on our roster that we have big time question marks about. And let's face it, Kenny Golladay, we have huge question marks about, and this is a big week for him to kind of erase some of those question marks and have a little bit more safety going into the playoffs, a little bit more of an idea of this is a guy that we can deploy in a certain scenario. But the fact is, honestly, I really do think this guy at the end of week 13 is going to be a drop. The New York Giants don't have a particularly great schedule the rest of season. They don't have a great playoff schedule, and I don't see why Kenny Golladay at this point is going to be a guy that's going to gain enough trust. He could have a big week. I think DFS, this is a great play. You know, is a great way to go. Great matchup. You know, like I said, Tony and Shepard gone, but the fact is Kenny Golladay hasn't shown up all season long. I think he's got 1-2 games that are worth a damn in PPR formats. This offense has been absolutely terrible. Who knows if Daniel Jones is going to play with that neck injury? There's a lot of negative things to go with the Giants. And once again, we're looking long-term at this point with the playoffs right around the corner. So Kenny Golladay, it's a put up or shut up. And I mean, you need to put up big. You need to put up eye-popping numbers for you to not be a drop after this week. Just a quick reminder to make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the likes, all the shares, all the subscriptions, and I definitely appreciate anybody who is going to interact in the comment section. I try to reply to every single comment that is ever on any of my videos. So the fact is if you comment, I'll get back to you, and it will be me, and I'll get back to you in an expedient manner. So if you have any start-sit questions, just hit me up in the comments, and give me a little like and a share and a subscribe, and you don't have to, but it would be nice. Let's talk about somebody this week who's in a great position to succeed, and that is Brandon Aiyuk of the San Francisco 49ers. He's going to be on the road at the Seattle Seahawks, so they're not traveling far. They're just traveling up I-5, the I-5 corridor, up through Oregon and into Washington and to Seattle. Well, let's face it, Seattle has been a fucking mess. And Debo is basically a no-go. I believe he's actually already been ruled out for week 13, and Brandon Aiyuk has a great opportunity to shine against Seattle. And their defense at the beginning of the season was absolutely atrocious, and they have gotten their shit together a little bit more. But the fact is this is not a good defense. This is not a good offense, and this should be a great week for Brandon Aiyuk to come through and give you an awesome floor and an amazing ceiling without Deebo Samuel there. I think, obviously, this is a guy who's flex-worthy in PPR since week 8. I think he only has one dud in that span. And the Seahawks defense has been better, but like I said, they're a defense that you want to avoid. So without Deebo there, with the numbers that he's been putting up for about for the last 5 weeks, I feel pretty comfortable flexing Brandon Aiyuk and feeling like this is a guy who really could be an X factor in my starting lineup this week. And I don't know if he's going to give you those rushing numbers that we got from Deebo Samuel, but he's shown us not just in 2021, but in 2020 that he does have a special ability to make plays for the San Francisco 49ers. So a great opportunity for Brandon Aiyuk to succeed here in week 13. Somebody who I'm not looking to play, it's not going to be his week, and that's going to be Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. He is a guy that in my stock report I had trending down, is somebody who even is in that droppable territory, or like I say, a desperate flex play, and this week is no different. 29% started on the road at Kansas City. And the fact of the matter is, in 2021, he's shown us an extremely low ceiling. 13.2 PPR points is the most he's scored this season, and that you have to go all the way back to week 1. The worst, his floor, 4.5 PPR points. You don't have to go very far. That was in week 12. So his ceiling was back in week 1. His floor is in week 12. We're talking about a guy who's competing with targets with Sutton, Patrick, Fant. You even have to throw Javonte Williams in there from the backfield. They're throwing to their other tight ends and Albert Okwuegbunam, and it's a muddled wide receiving core. Those targets get pretty evenly distributed. Teddy Bridgewater is not a guy that's slinging it all over the field. He's got a moderate average depth of target. He's not somebody that is really doing much for fantasy. I think he's averaging something around 1.3 touchdowns a game. So you're kind of rolling the dice with all of those guys that are catching balls. Which one is going to catch a touchdown? And guess what? Jerry Jeudy, I understand, hasn't played in that many games this season, but he hasn't caught any touchdowns either. So he's a guy that you really have to be wary of. He is a desperate flex play in PPR. To me, in standard, he's a guy you have to avoid. And just basically this entire Bronco wide receiving core is a core that you want to avoid. You know, I think if there is going to be a player to catch a touchdown, you have a greater percentage in a guy like Tim Patrick or Cortland Sutton than you do in Jerry Jeudy. But I think both of those guys are even a worse start than Jeudy. I think they're all terrible starts and somebody that you should avoid, yet there are about 30% of managers out there that still have this guy in their starting lineup. And then let's talk about somebody you need to beware heading into week 13. And that's going to be Mike Williams. We saw back in week 11 what that goddamn ceiling could be, right? 20.7 points in week 11. And that was great to see because we hadn't seen anything from him since week 5. But since week 5, that guy, and so we go from week 6 on, has only averaged 8.7 PPR points. And that includes that week 11 20.7 PPR point game. Now, when you're taking into account that I believe that was something around 5 games, because there was a bye week in there, that in 5 games, the guy has averaged 8.7 PPR points, and that's including a 20-point game. That's not good. That's not a good trend for you. Does he have a good ceiling? Does he have a good boom ceiling? Yes, but he's been reaching that floor more often than he's been reaching the ceiling, and quite a bit more often than reaching the ceiling. In fact, right now, if you would just want to take the last 5 games into account, dude has a 20% chance of booming and an 80% chance of busting, and that's just easy math off the top of my head. And then you also take into account when we look at the road games, right? Because this is going to be a road game, early morning cross-country game, notoriously bad for West Coast teams. Has not played well in a road game since week 3. So now we have to go all the way back to week 3 to see a game where the Chargers have been on the road and Mike Williams has been a big factor for this offense. So Could he go boom this week? Sure. But to me, there's an 80% chance right now on our recent sample size that he busts. So he's a guy that you need to beware. I understand if you're starting him, if you have to start him in your flex, you're looking at your opponent and you're just looking on your bench who has the greatest upside. And I will admit, Williams does have good upside, and he's shown us what that good upside could be. I mean, goddamn, through the first 5 weeks of the season, the motherfucker looked unstoppable. However, the problem is, like I said, when you go back to week 6 and all the way up through 12, he's not been very good. And you have to be wary of that when the playoffs are on the line. But we also have to worry about what are our situations. So I understand if you deployed him, but 55% of managers right now feel comfortable with that guy in their lineup. And the way that the wide receiver position is, I just feel like you could find yourself a safer option with similar upside elsewhere. I want to thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And on Sunday mornings, I join Mike Lynch and Rashad Taylor on 1080 The Fan here in Portland, Oregon for the Fantasy Scramble. We answer last-minute start-sit questions, and we can answer your last-minute start-sit questions. All you have to do is text in to 503-250-1080 on Sunday morning. We start the Fantasy Scramble at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, a half hour before kickoff, and we take those start-sit questions all the way up to kickoff. So once again, I would like to thank you for watching, and make sure that you keep your eye out for my Week 13 running back start-sit as well.